What's up, college football fans and Mean Green fans? Sonoy Valente here once again with the Mean Green Show. Today, joined once again by Ryan Davenport. We're going to recap this North Texas Tulane game. But before we get into all that, you already know the drill. If you're a fan of college football or G5 football, consider hitting that like and subscribe button because that's truly all that we talk about. Okay, Ryan, just jumping right into the defensive side of the ball. What are your thoughts on the North Texas defense against Tulane?
I think they put up a good fight. I mean, it was a fun game to watch. I think um, offense struggled to get things going in the first half, and defense kept them to really about 14 points in that first half, which I think was a success. I mean, yes, they scored right before halftime, got 21 up. We can talk about that on the defense. I mean, on the offensive side a little bit, but I don't think that was really a defensive. Um, yeah, I think that giving Tulane the ball with that little time or that much time left late in the game was more of an offensive issue than it was a defensive. So, really, for the defense being able to go in, keep them in my mind to about 14 points in the first half, keep them to 7 points a quarter the last two. I think that was a win for a top 25 team. I mean that was a solid performance. I mean, yes, you still gave up 250 yards on the ground, but you held them to under 200 through the air. Um, 439 total yards, a little high, but I mean, they were in the game the whole time. So I think the defense right now, the goal is to keep the offense in the game, keep UNT in the game, and give them opportunities to win. And I think they did that. So could they be better? Sure. We've all talked about the issues on defense, but I think they're at least doing what needs to be done to give us an opportunity to win.
Yeah, kind of jumping in some individual stats. So Jordan Brown led the tackling efforts with 8 tackles, and Patrick Smith was right behind him with 6 tackles. And let's see here, Phil Hill had 1 interception, and Logan Wilson had a pretty good game, and a kick return in there as well. So, defensively, I mean, Rod Brown, nose guard, maybe one of the best defensive players we have. He had a pretty good game. Not I think he had 4 tackles. I'm not sure what the rest of the stats were for him. But so do you feel, pulling up the team stats against Tulane, box score, whatever, they still let 245 rushing yards go, as well as 35 points. So just going off that alone, it doesn't really sound like it was a successful outing, or that we really have much to go off of. But, if you're following North Texas closely, as us as fans, we do, you can't help but see that there is a trend up.
Yeah.
And even though the statistics aren't really showing it, you kind of have to think, compared to FIU, a much lesser team than a top ranked, Tulane, they pulled, the FIU rushed for 223 yards, and a total yards of 514. So the total yards they kept Tulane under what they kept FIU. So do you think there's reason for optimism? Obviously, there's a reason, but how much optimism do you think we can put into this game and this outing defensively, being that it was such an opponent? And let me ask you this, kind of from a team perspective, not going into the offense too much. Do you think this was a fluke off game for Tulane? And back in 2022, I believe it was just last year, they did lose to Southern Miss. At home for Tulane. So Tulane's kind of been known to have an off game here or there during a season. Do you think it was more of an off game for Tulane, or an off good game for the North Texas defense, and maybe just collectively as a team?
No, I don't think Tulane had a bad game. I think the defense played well watching the game. Now, the stats don't reflect that, but I think the last couple of games, we've seen a trend of the defense being able to keep North Texas in the game. They did it against Navy. They did it against Tulane. Um, that's what this defense is going to be asked to do this year. We don't have the players, and I think where I saw it the most was there was several times that Tulane went back to pass, and nobody was open. They were really sitting back and really having a lot of success in the back end. Now, we gave up some scrambles that gives me heartburn, but unfortunately, you're in the 3-3-5. That's where you're going to be weak, and Tulane was able to capitalize on it. Obviously, the big one at the end of the game, But even before that, there were several times where we have them in a bad situation, yardage or down and distance wise, and we have good coverage in the back end, and then we're giving up a scramble for a first down. You know, our run defense is our weak spot. It's been that way all season. No difference here for Tulane, but I think again, the Stevens going to be asked to keep the offense in the game, and that's what they did. So, anytime we can keep us in the game, I think it's a success this year.
I agree with you. I think the task for this year defensively is keep this offense to be able to strike and keep this team in the game. That being said, the next 3 games are Memphis, UTSA, and SMU. Does the performance that you saw against Tulane give you reason to believe that maybe we could get 1, maybe 2, but at least 1 out of these next 3? And what do you think that magic number is for the next 3 games that the defense has to hold the opposing offense to in order to be kept in the game? Do you think it's like a 31? Like if the defense holds them to 31, is that enough for this offense to go out and win the game, or do you think is it more than that? Is 31
No,
realistic, or is it 35?
I think if we can hold people to 31 points, we'll be in games. I think 400 or less yards, we're in games, and I think given what I saw against Tulane, we should be able to play in every game we're going to play the rest of this year. Doesn't mean we're going to win them, but I will say that we can hang with everybody from we're going to score, we're going to get down the field, and we're going to put points on the board. We're going to get 30 points, 40 points, 50 points a game sometimes because we do have that good of an offense right now where they're performing at that high of a level. So anytime you have that ability, it's going to come down to other things like special teams, clock management, things like that as to whether we win or lose, more so than whether the defense gives up 30 or 35 points. Now, I will say that we have a tough slate ahead, but I think we at least have given ourselves an opportunity to be in those games. And if that's the best of the AAC right now, we should feel good about being able to at least pick up one of those if we show up and have a good performance. So that's my 2 cents. I think we can steal one from those groups if we have a good game.
Okay, just kind of going right over to the offensive side of the ball. What are your thoughts there?
Obviously, the goose egg in the first half is hard. But I'm be honest, if we had held them to 14 points, I wouldn't have been that upset. We gave up one right at the end of the first half. And that one frustrates me because it's happened several times this season. It happened against Cal, where because we're not managing the clock or the down and distance effectively, we're giving the other team another opportunity right before halftime. And that's happened several times. I don't know if that's intentional or if, to some degree, the staff looks like they're unsure. They don't know that it's 4th down. They don't know that it's 4th and long. They don't know we're putting with a minute left. We're going out of bounds to let them hold a timeout and not use a timeout and let more time go off the clock. And we're giving them the ball back. And that's coaching issues that I see. Now, it comes with a young staff, a new staff. I mean, those are things that we can clean up. But it is frustrating as a fan to say we could go to halftime with 14 down, make adjustments, have a 21-point third quarter, and we're up by 7. You know what I mean? But we didn't do that.
Yeah, kind of dive into the statistics of it. Rogers was about 69% completion, 343 yards, 2 touchdowns, leading the efforts in rushing with 34 yards. Spread the ball around. Macklin with 71 yards, 1 touchdown. Conwright 4 receptions, 70 yards. And again, just kind of peppering it around. Another thing that I feel like is worth mentioning, we saw Lennon Sides get to start, I believe it was against Abilene Christian. I think he's been starting ever since then, but a pretty fair rotation. But in this game, obviously, probably one of the bigger games of the season that you see them go to him a lot.
Mm-hmm.
In crucial times. And he might be 19, but he still might be 18 years old, true freshman.
Right.
And I think that leaves reason for, just there's a lot of runway with Sides if you can retain him. Now, that's, we can have that conversation another time, but it's interesting to see them really put that Genuine trust, I guess you could say, not just so much, you're starting against an FCS opponent. We'll throw it to you here and there, but they really, putting the ball in his hands in crucial moments. And even that last fourth down, that was, an attempt to get to sides the
Yeah.
ball. And, so anyway, I want to ask you this question in your playing days, prior to your playing days, currently, as long as you've been following the team, let me frame it up with this. If I was to ask you who's the greatest of all time NFL quarterback, who would you say?
I'd go with Tom Brady.
Okay, and I think general consensus would say that without anybody's emotions in it, I think everybody would say that if you had to give it. Now, if you were going into God-given ability, tangibles, all that, then the Patrick Mahomes, the Aaron Rodgers, your Cam Newton, something like that, you can make a case for. I get that.
Sure.
So that's what I want to ask you. In all your time of covering North Texas and being around the team and being on the team, can you think of another quarterback in program history that has more ability than Rodgers has seemed to display in his short time as the starting quarterback at North Texas?
So I never personally played with anybody who I think had as much ability as I see out of Rodgers. I played with some guys who had maybe one piece of it, a great running quarterback, a guy that was good at reading defenses or something, but he really puts it all together. I mean, 14 touchdowns, 1 interception, controlling the ball, keeping it away from the defense. Those are things that I think speak volumes to him. I think of just pure athleticism. A guy like Andrew Smith comes to mind. Obviously, he was cut down in his prime and passed away prior to having a real long career here. But he was a guy that always people brought up that was going to be a great player, but never got that opportunity. So I would tip the hat to him. I mean, obviously Mason Fine is an all-time great at North Texas, but he didn't have the physical gifts that Rodgers seems to display. I think the biggest negative from a North Texas perspective is we've got him this year. Hopefully we get him for one more. And I think he's got a real chance to take down single season passing records and maybe TD records, but he's not going to be an all-time. He probably cracked the top 10 all time because if you look at North Texas passing stats, he's already, what did I tell you pre-tape? He's
I think
already
you said he was
number
18.
18 on that list. So he's got 1,762 yards. If he gets to 2,600, he'll be number 10 or 11 on that list this year. So, and that's all time stats. So we haven't had, other than Mason Fine and maybe Derek Thompson, Asinani. Those are guys who had longer careers. Scott Hall had a long career. There's a handful of guys that had multiple year-long careers, but even some of the guys I played with, like Giovanni Visa, didn't play here all 4 years. He played for like 2 of them. Riley Dodge, who was a good player, was hurt part of his tenure, so he didn't have these lengthy, 11-game seasons. So I mean, he's got a real chance to be at the top end. In the discussions about all-time best North Texas quarterbacks. And really that's going to come down to what he can do and where he can put them. I think having success and getting to the postseason is part of that. And if they don't win some of these games, that's going to be a tough thing to do this year. So that'll really be a next season discussion.
So follow-up question to that. So currently North Texas has Cash McCollum as a 2024 QB commit out of high school, China Springs, and he's putting up video game numbers over there. So hopefully that, they can retain that. But realistically speaking, you get a generational quarterback every so often. It's whenever Rodgers ends, there's no guarantee that a Rodgers player caliber is going to step in and take his spot whenever that is. So being that he's a junior, he has this year and next year, how much pressure do you feel like that puts on this, Coach Morris ultimately I need to win as much as I can, probably next year, really peaking there while I have this generational QB?
You gotta. I think Rodgers is a great QB, but he's also in a great system to be a QB. He's gonna put up great numbers because of the system too. That's going to attract quarterbacks who want to put up great numbers. Maybe there are guys who can go to bigger schools, but they're not going to pass for as many yards as they might here. And that reminds me of that Texas Tech style. There were some great quarterbacks that came out of there. Kingsbury, Mahomes came out of there. Mayfield was there for a while. There's a lot of guys who had a lot of success who came through that system. I think we're going to attract more of those guys here because of the system. So I don't think the pressure changes. I think Morris feels like he needs to win now anyway, regardless of having Rodgers or not, because that is the world we live in now. If you're not bringing people in every year, reloading every year, and being successful every year, nobody's happy with your performance. But I think we're going to see more people wanting to come here because they can be great quarterbacks here.
Well, all right, Ryan. Anything else we need to jump on or touch on before we jump off?
Homecoming next week, Memphis coming in, and Memphis lost.
They're 7 points
Tulane.
favorites. They're 7-point favorites. What are your thoughts about this one?
I think we could take it. I would take UNT in that one
to cover
up.
At least. You
picked
them to cover against Tulane, and you were right. I almost took Tulane to cover the 20 points. I didn't take it. I didn't touch it, but I thought Tulane was going to beat them by more than 20. You said to cover it, and you were right. What are your thoughts on Memphis? North Texas cover 7?
I think we win. I'm going to take the win.
Did you think we win before this Tulane game that just passed?
I think we'd be in the game. I probably wouldn't have taken the win. I probably would have taken the cover again. But watching the Tulane game, I'm now going for the win. I'm going the other way.
Okay. All right.
They put me over the top.
We'll see. All right. Well, go Mean Green.
Go Mean Green.